Hey guys, SuperHorrorBro Mike here, and in today's video we take a look at the story behind Darq and its ambiguous ending to explain what exactly is going on in Lloyd's dream world and why. Much of the game is told through metaphors, and so in order to decipher the true meaning behind Darq, we need to establish what the game's symbolic imagery is actually trying to tell us. Only then can we truly understand the mysterious tale of a young boy named Lloyd who seems to be trapped within a lucid dream and haunted by a series of ever more nightmarish entities. First off, let us quickly look at what the standard definition of a lucid dream actually is. Wikipedia describes a lucid dream as follows: a dream during which the dreamer is aware that they are dreaming. During a lucid dream, the dreamer may gain some amount of control over the dream characters, narrative, and environment. This description seems to perfectly fit when applied to Lloyd's journey in Darq, a dream world he for the most part can manipulate and has control over. So now let us move on to an overview of recurring themes and objects found within the game's 7 strange chapters. We see cogs and gears throughout Lloyd's adventures. In fact, they show up on key artwork for Darq 2. It's obvious that these gears are far more than simply ways to solve puzzles and navigate levels. They have a deeper meaning for sure, but what is that meaning? Well, this one is pretty simple, as we know the game's narrative is taking place within Lloyd's mind as he sleeps. Gears or cogs turning are a common expression for how the human brain works. It is often stated that when someone is lost deep in thought, that others can see their gears turning. So, these gears simply represent Lloyd trying to fix his mind and see clearly enough to escape this never-ending nightmare he finds himself trapped within. During several stages, Lloyd encounters puzzles that require the use of arms and legs to solve. It seems odd to say the least how many key items we end up searching for are severed limbs, not to mention it's pretty darn creepy. But these limbs obviously have importance, and in fact, dream analysts believe severed limbs do hold meaning within a person's dreams. A severed limb is said to represent the feeling of powerlessness. Lloyd is an anxious character and haunted by many demons as he traverses his lucid dream. Therefore, it seems logical to conclude these limbs do in fact represent this powerless feeling. However, they do also act as a way to progress deeper into this dream, and the other common symbolism for hands and legs within a dream is taking control of one's destiny. So I do believe both interpretations can apply to Lloyd's dream here, these limbs representing both a positive and negative force. One thing that is apparent from the very first location of the game is that time matters in Darq. It plays an enormous role within the game, from the grandfather clock in Lloyd's bedroom spinning both clockwise and counterclockwise, to the puzzles involving clock hands, and even in Chapter 2, a giant watch used to bridge a gap. Darq is full of time-based symbolism. We constantly hear ticking at points of the game too, where Lloyd is given a short amount of time to solve a puzzle. In some cases, failing to complete a task within a time limit even causes Lloyd's nightmares to catch up with him and the game to end. So why is time such a prominent motif? Well, this actually ties into the next section of this theory. Lloyd is running out of time, and not only that, the world he inhabits is also not quite what it seems. It seems like Lloyd goes to sleep each night and explores a separate dream world, each of these taking place over the game's 7 chapters. At the end of each dream, Lloyd exits through a gap in the wall, a gap that takes him back to the real world where he now appears to be awake and back in his apartment. However, this apartment doesn't quite feel right. For a start, the holes in the walls found within the dreams can be seen at both the far left and far right sides of his apartment. The clock is spinning both forward and back in time. Eventually, Lloyd even witnesses the sight of a wheelchair woman's shadow just off screen here, an enemy in the game who eventually comes for Lloyd while he sleeps. This isn't a safe space, and it isn't Lloyd's true reality. This is still his prison, a limbo-like state he is trapped within. The dreams Lloyd explores aren't simply dreams, they are a dream within a dream. If all this sounds confusing to you, don't worry, it will make sense pretty soon. So now we've established where Lloyd is and what some of the key imagery in the game actually means, let's move on to the story itself and what Lloyd's journey represents. At least in my opinion, this game is very ambiguous and open to interpretation in many ways. With that said, I do feel confident with my personal take on things, so here goes. If we quickly analyse Lloyd's appearance, we see a lanky, sickly looking boy with a bald head. This is fairly consistent with someone who is suffering from illness, potentially a terminal illness. He's a far cry from a healthy looking individual, something which strongly confirms this assessment of Lloyd can be found in the setting for Chapter 6, which takes place within the emergency ward of a hospital. Now add to this the many different enemies Lloyd tries to evade throughout his journey. Many of these people, if you can call them that, are bandaged up and impaired. For example, the old lady in the wheelchair who seems to be blind and hunts by sound, as does this strange mumbling man who stumbles about in the park and on the train. Then there's the gramophone man, again a disfigured, limbless creature in a wheelchair with a giant gramophone for a head. His chest breathes in and out in slow, deliberate bursts. These all represent the patients in the ward where Lloyd himself is currently staying. His nightmares are simply the fellow residents of the hospital. In reality, the gramophone man is simply a disfigured victim of some terrible accident hooked up to some kind of breathing respirator. The old woman, a victim of dementia who is likely at the end of her life, wailing in a blind stupor. These patients scared Lloyd, who is after all an anxious young boy, himself living out his last days on the hospital ward due to his sickness. However, I do not believe all of the characters that pose danger to Lloyd throughout the story of Darq are patients of this hospital. Two of them represent the hospital staff. The masked man here fiddling with potions symbolises the doctor that tended to Lloyd, hence his seemingly magical powers. While the female characters with lampshades for heads represent the nurses tending to him. Their heads light up as they constantly shine torches into Lloyd's eyes to check his condition, a common practice used on patients in a coma-like state, useful for checking their brain activity. The guns these enemies wield are simply a metaphor for the needles these nurses would inject Lloyd with each day, most likely administering a healthcare drug such as morphine to help with his pain. Lloyd appears in his true form during this nightmare too. We see him present as this terrified little boy, a bag covering his head as he stumbles through the various stages. Another piece of symbolism. This boy looks far healthier and also far younger than Lloyd. This is a representation of Lloyd before his illness took hold. A scared child who always ran from things he didn't understand. Things such as the other residents of the hospital he would eventually end up bedridden within. This would also explain why masks are a recurring visual within the game. In this room, masked creatures attack Lloyd unless he himself is wearing a mask. Lloyd never felt safe around strangers due to his anxiety, and so by hiding behind a mask within these dreams, he feels he can confront his fears. Backtracking slightly, yes, I did mention Lloyd being in a coma-like state when speaking of the nurses. You see, Lloyd never wakes up from this lucid dream because, as mentioned earlier, this is a limbo-like state. While in hospital, Lloyd's sickness seems to have progressed to the stage where he is unable to wake in the real world any longer. He is in a coma now within the hospital itself. We never see the real world in the game, only the nightmarish one within Lloyd's own mind. And now it makes sense why Lloyd in this game looks far older, skinnier, and balder than this representation of his younger, healthier self. The trains we board and journey throughout the game literally represent Lloyd's journey toward the afterlife as his body in the real world gives up. Hence why we are running out of time and the clocks make no sense throughout the game. As the screen shakes during certain points in the game, this is literally Lloyd's heart giving up and slowing down. The elevator plunging downwards during the final stage and then leading into a chase sequence where all of Lloyd's nightmares come for him at once while the very foundation around him crashes down is his heart failing and his body dying in the hospital bed. Finally, Lloyd arrives at a bright light as a door opens for him to travel through into the afterlife. Lloyd finally finds peace as he leaves his body and his spirit travels on to the next one. You see, we hear one final sound before the credits roll. The sound is of a baby crying as it's born. Lloyd's spirit has been reincarnated within a new vessel. So while this story is a sad one, the ending is bittersweet, revealing how Lloyd has moved on to a second chance at life, hopefully as a less troubled and sickly individual. But that's just my interpretation of the story of Darq. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. And that's it for today's video. Please remember to give it a like if you did enjoy watching, and maybe drop a comment too, as well as subscribing to the channel and turning on notifications so you never miss an upload. This channel specializes in variety horror content, including creepypasta readings, horror gaming facts and theories, and general interest pop culture horror videos. So if you're interested in all things spooky, you'll find something to enjoy here at SuperHorrorBro. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next video.